Hi there, my name is Noah Howe, and I would like to welcome all of you to my presentation on the effect of music on study and work habits and cognitive memorization. I am the researcher. My name is Noah Howe. I'm a senior at Minnetonka High School, and I've been in the research program for 1 year. My mentors for this project were Mr. Kors, who is my choir teacher, and David Jorlett, who is my voice instructor. So just I'd just like to give some background info on music in general and what its purpose is and the evolution of music and its importance in modern day life. And I think that music is so criminally underrated in our modern society. We use it for everything. I mean, everywhere that you look, every video that you listen to, every ad even has some sort of music playing in the background, and that music is intended to influence your mind in favor of the product that it's marketing. That's why music is used so many times in marketing and in videos to make things more appealing. And even in movies, you see music can take something that would be ordinarily not super interesting, and through music it can dramatize it so that it's something fantastic and magical. So truly, I think that music is a part of our lives that we see as very important, but we don't necessarily see the full impact of it, and we don't necessarily see the full scope of it all the time. And the evolution of music is also exceedingly interesting, just because music is an art form that tends to build off of the work of its predecessors. So you go back to, the days even before the Renaissance and before music like madrigals and spirituals started to pop up, and you look at music from all these different cultures, and they all have their own unique styles and elements and characteristics, rhythms, melodies, scales that make them what they are. And music is such a unique art form because it's managed to take all that with the globalization of the modern world and blend it all together to make an art form that is truly just expressive of the human experience in general. And that's what I believe the importance of music to be, and that's what I think its purpose is to express, what it means to be human in the modern world, and to be able to share emotions and experiences in the rawest possible form that we can. And also just I'd love to just dive into some basic music theory as well. So music, as I've said before, is an art form that builds off of the work that has been done in the past, right? And in doing that, it's incorporated several different things from different eras. And each era of music tends to have a style that it is, or a style or technique that is characteristic of that time period. So for music like Renaissance classical music. There's a lot of layering of voice parts. The sopranos, the high voices, typically have the melody. It's very repetitive. There are a lot of repeats and refrains. And then also there's a lot of echoing of parts. And the resolution at the end of each phrase is typically created by the altos, or the second highest, the lowest female voice. And there's a lot of tension and release as the different sequences and layerings end and come back together, that releases tension and allows it to be, it makes Renaissance classical music what it is. An example of this is the song Sicut Cervis by Giovanni della Palestrina. It's an excellent song. I highly recommend you go check it out if you haven't listened to it already. But it's a very good representation of what Renaissance classical music is. And then just building off of that, Golden Age classical music also incorporates, the echoing of parts. The melody is sustained by the sopranos as well as the tenors, too. And the tenors are the highest male voice. And then also, it tends to crescendo and decay slightly more through the phrases. And that has just come along with the idea of vocal line and what's natural for the voice to do as a phrase begins and ends. There's also resolution on, tension built throughout a phrase and resolution on the final chord, but these chords tend to be to the thirds and the fifths as well. So more power chords, as we refer to them. Just then building off of that too, sacred, the sacred genre of music also incorporates a lot of stuff like that. The harmony there are many 8 parts for the, for sacred tones, and there are many 8 parts for every single one, but particularly in sacred because they're meant to be sung in these large open spaces that have excellent acoustics, and so as a result of that, there are 8 parts so that the full counter melodies and the harmonies can fully come out. They tend to resolve more to a third and a sixth is a little bit more tense and a little bit darker sound, which is typically what you get when you have a sacred song. Obviously, there are going to be exceptions to this, as there are with every style of music throughout history, but that is a tendency. And then you start to build into the more modern music. Modern choral music loves to use cluster chords. I don't know if you've heard of Eric Whitacre. He's a choral genius. Highly recommend that you check him out if you haven't. But that builds to, the thirds, the fourths, and the fifths to create tension and release through the power chords and the longing of a major fourth before it resolves to the tonic. And there's a lot more emphasis on just stress and release in modern choral music too. Emphasis on dynamic phrasing in order to let the music convey the emotion of the piece instead of just the words. So really, a lot of the drive behind modern music, and not just modern choral music, is allowing the emphasis on dynamics and phrasing to convey the emotion behind the piece instead of just necessarily the words. And you'll see that throughout every type of music in the modern day, whether you're listening to like modern rap, pop, or even jazz, choral, rock. It's just there's a lot more emphasis on what the voice or the instruments are doing to portray the meaning of the piece, and instead of just the words. And then I think it's also very important to realize that every genre that's a modern genre has built off a lot of these things too. Soft rock, for a good example, primarily the golden age of soft rock was in the 70s and 80s, and that builds a lot off of ballad-like songs, and again, just vocal line really helps with stuff like that. And everything, just the purpose of this was to show that every single type of music builds off of the work of its predecessors to establish and create more of what the human experience is like, which is why music is so ridiculously important in our modern lives, and why so many people listen to music, especially as they grow older and they go through their teenage years, and it becomes a very important emotional part of many people's lives. So, the problem that I began to research was the fact that we as a society have a lack of knowledge concerning the genres of music and their effect on our productive habits, and as well as just a lack of understanding about how music influences our daily life. As I've said before, music is a crucial, quintessential part of the way we live our lives today, and it's not recognized as much as it should be. And as a result of that, there haven't been a ton of studies concerning what specific genres of music affect productivity. Like, obviously, we can, say that many people use music, more soothing music, like jazz and choral music for studying and for working in order to calm themselves, but we don't really know why that is or what specific genres in those classifications are the best at doing what they do. So my hypothesis for this question was that music, again, with gentler melodic lines and less sharp and pounding rhythms, will have a more positive effect on the work quality and output, as it's less distracting and instead more relaxing to the ear, which will ultimately release stress and increase serotonin and dopamine levels within the brain, which will allow the worker to be less stressed and able to get more work done, as well as just output better high quality work. And as such, going along with that, I hypothesized that the styles with the most positive effect will be classical music, modern choral music, soft rock, and Gregorian chant, because they all share the same sort of ballad-like soft energy that I believe to be very beneficial to the brain while attempting to study or do work. So, my methods and research overview. In order to discover what types of music are the most effective in while studying, in order to answer my question and prove my hypothesis, I was able to assemble a group of 7 different test subjects, all of whom were involved in different activities at the high school and were from different grades, ranging from freshmen to seniors, just to try to get a more balanced idea of the effect that music has specifically on teens who are studying and doing work. So in order to do this, I selected several different songs that I felt were representative of different eras and genres of music, and I discussed this with my mentors as well. So just to give a few examples, And a great example of Golden Age classical that combines a lot of the elements of it is Beati Quantum Via by Charles Villiers Stanford. Sacred, really good example is Crucifixus by Antonio Lodi. Fantastic example of modern choral music is Sleep by Eric Whitacre. A very good representation of pop and the more pounding and more bright rhythms that it has is High Hopes by Panic at the Disco. A very good example of soft rock and its more ballad-like tone is Escape by Rupert Holmes. And then hard rock, Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi, again, just really shows the tension in that. And yeah, just so on and so forth. I was able to select different songs that I felt were indicative of each different style based on the musical elements that were found in them. So, building off of that then, I had each of my subjects listen to that music during a couple different tests. And the first test that I conducted was what we call a monkey test. And it's called a monkey test because monkeys, much like this little guy over here, these tests are used to test monkeys and their cognitive ability. And basically what the test is, if you can see in these three pictures here, it shows on the screen, it shows a random... It shows numbers 1 through 9 generated in a completely random order. And so the subject who's taking the test looks at these numbers and tries to memorize where they are on the board. And as soon as you click on the number 1, a box like that, those white boxes appear and they cover up the rest of the numbers. And your objective is to try to figure out, or try to click on the numbers in the right order, right? So it tests cognitive memory ability, it also tests... reaction time and ability to analyze data quickly, because the entire thing is timed, and that's how I was able to compare data between my different subjects. And so when you click on a wrong one, it'll say failed instead of passed like it does here, and you'll have to go back, so I also was able to keep that in my data set as well. And then the second test that I had my subjects take was a typing speed test, just to analyze, how quickly they could type, their reaction speed, and again, ability to process data as the words were coming up here. And I don't know if you can see, it's a little bit difficult, but each word would pop up there, and the objective was to type it. And so I was able to, gather the number of words typed per minute for each individual subject, as well as their accuracy while typing. So these were the tests that I had each subject complete in order to evaluate what style of music worked best. And I had them complete these same tests, I believe it was 11 times to represent the different genres of music I was analyzing. My results, to prove my hypothesis, or backing my support of my hypothesis, my results were that with a confidence interval of 95% using a unvaried t-test, we can conclude that modern choral music, classical music, and soft rock have a positive influence on the way humans study and think critically and effectively. And that's shown in every single one of these graphs here. I will try to highlight for all of you the modern choral genre in specific. So there's modern choral, as you can see, seconds taken to complete the Beat the Chimp cognitive puzzle, which is the monkey test that I had them do. It reduced it by about, 2 seconds on average between the 7 test subjects. And the results like that are fairly even across the board. Again, attempts taken to complete the cognitive memory puzzle, the monkey test. Modern choral was, on average, 2 attempts. The base was 4. And then you go to genres like pop, which have harder rhythms, and hard rock as well. Hard rock had an average of 4.4 seconds. So it wasn't too bad. It was still more than the base range, but only by 0.4 of a second. But pop, on the other hand, had a average of 6.2 seconds, which is a full, 2.2 seconds more than the base time without any music, and a full 4.2 seconds more than modern choral music in particular had. And the results were, again, very consistent with the typing speed. Modern choral music had the fastest typing speed with 47.2%, and again, pop had the lowest with 37.4%. So I think it is safe to say, as a result of these tests, that music, classical music, modern choral music, those cluster tones and the tension and release that's felt in each dynamic phrase has a massive effect on the way that we as humans can process and perceive data.